Congratulations, your RA just hired someone new. You need to get them probably a laptop, maybe a desktop, an email address, access to all of your systems. And if you don't have an IT company handling this, in this video, this is exactly what you should be doing in order to have a seamless onboarding process. Because the truth is, there are so many studies done by big companies proving that the onboarding is the most important thing. And also, on day one, you want that employee to start getting embedded in your world. You don't want to have to sit there and more tech problems, and you're guessing, you're not exactly sure what to do and how to do it. How are you doing? My name is Harrison Barron from Secure Wealth IT. We help RIAs with their technology, making sure that they can run correctly and really removing this burden. But I know that not everyone has somebody to handle your technology, so that's what this video is all about. And if you'd like to learn more about us, you could head over to securewealthit.com. And hey, if you're ever going over some numbers, we have under our resources here a finance calculator. I know a lot of RAs are using calculator.net, but truth be told, I think calculator.net looks terrible. So we built our own completely custom platform. And if you have FMG Suite, we can actually integrate it with FMG Suite. But we built a completely custom platform. It covers all of the core things that you need, and you could just throw some data in here and get really nice looking graphs. So that way you can kind of wow them and show them what exactly they should be looking for versus a less desirable, less exciting tool out there. And if you want to learn more about us, you can head over to our YouTube channel. Obviously, you're on it. Subscribe, a notification bell. And we have a really, really active blog. I'm consistently writing more and more and more content. So let's talk about the core thing, right? You hired a new employee. What's the next step? Well, you need a computer. And the first thing that you have to do is buy the right computer. And a lot of RAs get this wrong. There's a couple things that you need to look for. One, you don't want to look for like a gaming laptop. That's not what this is for. If you were in engineering or something of that nature, yeah, I'd probably say you need a little bit more horsepower and graphics for that. But you're an RA. You don't need to go super, super crazy. You have Dell Latitudes, Lenovo ThinkPads, HP EliteBooks. You want something good. Heck, you could even use a Microsoft Surface. I'm a big fan of those. And I'm just going to share my screen here because I did pull up. I'm a really, really big fan of Lenovo ThinkPads. I think their ThinkPad series is really, really good. Now, you don't need to go and break the bank, and you're probably looking, oh my God, $1,800. You don't need to go that crazy. You could easily go towards the $1,000 mark and even below that if you need. Remember, the computer is just the portal, essentially. Like, these are great computers for what they are. They're nothing crazy. They're not going to break the bank, and they're a good computer to start off with. Personally, also, just in full transparency, I've had really, really good success with Dell ThinkPads, Lenovo ThinkPads, and Dell Latitudes. To be honest, I really like a Lenovo ThinkPad. Some people don't like the little dot in the center. It's come in handy a couple times in a pinch for me, but there are a couple things that you want to look out for. You want at least an i5. If you're buying an Intel, you want an i5 processor. That's like a car with some good horsepower, maybe 250 to 350 horsepower. Enough to have fun, but nothing crazy. And at least 16 gigabytes of RAM at the time of recording this. Now, in full transparency, RAM has gotten really expensive in the tech world. So if you're going to add RAM down the road, you're better off buying it already put into the computer. And you want to look for an SSD instead of an HDD, which stands for solid state drive instead of hard disk drive. And that basically means the data can be accessed immediately and you can have everything lightning fast. So remember, an i5, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a SSD. That's really it. Now, more storage on the SSD is not a bad thing. Maybe about 256 to 500 gigs is a safe number to be around. Anything more than that is a little bit excessive. Anything less than that, I'd err on the side of caution. And you want Windows Pro, not Windows Home. There is a very, very big difference for that. When you're managing the organization, Windows Pro is really important. Windows Home cannot be managed through the way that normal systems are actually managed, which is also why you want to get a business grade computer on here. And just to kind of show you and click in here, just so you know what I'm talking about, right? In here you have a ThinkPad L16, which is usually means 16 inches, or they usually put the number in there. And then here you go. So a Intel Ultra 5 which is great. You want that Windows 11 Home, so that's where you have to be careful, right? You want Windows 11 Pro. 8 gigabytes of memory. It might be a little on the lighter side here. I'd prefer 16, 256 gigs of storage, right? 3-cell rechargeable, that's fine too, right? But this is a really, really good starting computer. Once again, it doesn't have Windows 11 Pro. I would really look for that, right? Lenovo recommends Windows 11 Pro for business. It says it right there. They're not going to let you mess that up. And if you go under laptops and you give it a second here, because they have way too many pop-ups on their system. But if you go through, you can sometimes search for on the left-hand side the Windows 11 Pro. Perfect. There it is. Right? And it'll give you that computer. This is a really, really good business-grade computer. 14 inches, right? You have a 7 series processor, which is fantastic. You have Windows 11 Pro 64, an integrated AMD Radeon, and that memory 16 gigs, and a 1 terabyte SSD. This is a really, really good computer for about $1,100. Now, that might sound like a lot of money, but you want to have enough horsepower. This person is going to be using this computer for several years. You can get 3 to 5 years out of a laptop if they're handled well and safely. Now, the next thing that you have to do is you have to set up their email address. You got the computer, you got to get them an email address. Now, if you're not on Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace yet, you are not doing the right thing. You can't have an @gmail.com or @Yahoo or whatever, at AOL, God forbid. You cannot and should not have that. You should have business grade email. Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, preferably Microsoft 365 Premium. Now, if you're on the Google Workspace suite, that's totally fine too. But you want to go in and create a new user in your account through the admin panel. You should be going in there, and usually new users range between $14 to $22 a person, depending on which tier you have of either one of them. But that's the bare basics, them getting set up. And the last thing that you do is after you get them their email address and hopefully set up their computer so it can access their email address, you want to do MFA right away. I should say that again, MFA right away. Multi-factor authentication immediately when they're getting settled in, because that means they're going to get verified. Hey, is this who we say it is? And that way it reduces the risk of a breach on your email address, which is always the most important thing. Now, after you do all these things, this is when it gets a little bit crazy, because now we need to lock down the laptop. We've gotten the computer, we've gotten access to their email, now we got to lock down the laptop. Now, this is when you want to start looking at antivirus and other solutions, something like BitLocker, right? This allows for full disk encryption, meaning the entire brain of that computer, or better yet, memory bank of that computer, is encrypted. So if the laptop ever gets stolen, the data is still protected. And you want to make sure you create a standard user account, not an admin account for their daily use. We want to make sure we turn on the basics of Windows Firewall, install that antivirus I was talking about. Windows Defender is totally fine as a baseline, but paid endpoint protection can sometimes be better as well. And then we always want to turn on updates on your computer. This is the most important thing. If we could stay up to date constantly on our computers with multi-factor authentication, we are taking the necessary steps, not all the steps, but at least the bare necessities of making sure that your computer is safe and secure. Now, the fourth thing you want to do, now that you've done the core, most important, you got the laptop, you set up the email, you lock down the computer to make it safe. Now we want to install the tools that you're actually using. Now, thankfully, in the RIA world, you are using tools, for the most part, completely accessible through whatever search engine you decide to use. I'm a big fan of Chrome, right? So you want to get set up in your CRM. You want to make them a new user in your CRM, Wealthbox, Redtail, Salesforce, whatever your firm uses. You want to get them set up in your financial planning software, eMoney, Money Guide Pro, Right Capital, whatever your choice is. You want to set them up in your custodian portals, Schwab, Fidelity, LPL, and you want to make sure you bookmark those and you can test them to get back there. Because remember, you're going to have to go in there and create a new user with their new email. That's why you're following this video, and hopefully you're hitting that like button so that way you can follow along and you don't miss a step. Next, you want to make sure you set up your compliance and archiving platforms if you're using that. Smarsh is a great example of that, especially with regulation SMP coming out. You want to give them Adobe Acrobat if they handle client documents. A password manager is pretty important, whatever one that you prefer. And then you want to set up Zoom or Teams for their video calls. Those are the core things that you need to do in order to have that person say, oh, I can finally use my computer on day one. Remember, you might be hiring a brand new, unseasoned veteran, but you also can follow this if you're hiring a seasoned veteran who already has clients. They're probably itching to bring people over, and they don't want to go through the hurdles and okay, this is going to take another day. They don't want that. They want it to be nice and seamless. They're coming to your firm to bring all of their accounts, and you are going to make money from that. Make sure it's a nice, seamless process. Now, the last couple of things that you need to do is give them file access and permissions. If there's anything that you have that they need permission to, now is the time to give them access to it. Shared folders, logos, branding, anything like that. If you're using OneDrive, SharePoint, it does not matter. But this is a great time to start giving them access. And this is where folder structures can come into play, where you have different sets of folders for specific sets of people. But you don't want everyone having access to everything, because that's going to cause problems, and honestly, it's just going to make your life easier by limiting how much access they have. It's much easier to give somebody a little bit more access than remove access. Trust me, I know, because this is what we do for work. And then one of the last and most important things, get your compliance stuff set up as fast as you possibly can afterwards, right? Have them sign an acceptable use policy for firm technology, enroll them in security awareness training, whatever it is. If it's know before FIN, breach secure now, there's a million of them out there. Document what access you give them is really important. Keep the documentation somewhere that you can find it if a regulator asks, and make sure you have a WISP in place. If you don't know what a WISP is, I've talked about it. It's a written information security plan. I've said it so many times now. Make them read it and make them sign it so they know exactly what's going on. And that's it. You're done. But if you know how I am, I like to leave the little golden nuggets all the way to the end. And I want to talk about some things that most firms typically forget. Make sure you set up a voicemail and phone system for them. If they have a desk or they have anything like that, get them set up in the system. Not just Teams, right? Set them up truly on whatever platform it is. If you're using RingCentral or other tool, whatever it is, get them set up so they can forward those phone calls over to their phone, and that way they're not missing anything. You also want to add them to the firm's printer or scanner, especially if there's one centrally located, and making sure the computer can print to that. You want to make sure that their screen locks automatically after a few minutes. I know that sounds crazy, but if they walk away from the computer, usually within a minute or two, just lock the screen. I know it's a pain in the butt, but for an industry that has so much compliance, it is the most important thing that you can do. God forbid they forget and walk away. It just limits the amount of chances of things going wrong. And then plan for what happens when they leave. I know that stinks, but you need to be able to shut off access to their entire system quickly. You never know. There's always bad players out there. We like to think that everyone's a good person, but there are bad players, there are malicious people in the tech world. Unfortunately, we see it because we deal with a lot of businesses, especially a lot of RIA firms here at Secure Wealth IT, and it stinks. It stinks being the person that has to be the bearer of bad news. But employees are going to take your stuff and potentially run. Most of them won't, but you never know. And you have to plan for what happens if they leave, especially unexpectedly. Being able to access and wipe their stuff is super, super important, and remove all credentials and access that they could currently have. So I hope you guys found some value in this video. If you did, and you want to learn more about us, you can head over to securewealthit.com. If you want help setting up a new employee, if you're thinking about, hey, I want to make sure that we're bringing on a bunch of people this year, and it's super easy and seamless, we are absolutely happy to help. We wish you nothing but success in your technology journey. And if you have a question about technology, feel free to leave us a comment either down below in the video description, or leave us a message on the website. Hey, could you make a video about that? We're constantly looking for more video ideas. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.